You've built a great business, you found a buyer, you agreed upon a price. Everything's done, right? Not so much. If you are selling a business, some of the biggest landmines, some of the biggest risks that can derail the exit of a business have nothing to do with price, and they can show up at the last minute and really throw everything into a mess. And so, in this video, we want to walk through 4 deal killers, 4 deal breakers to get ahead of, to tackle preemptively as much as possible to optimize a sale or exit of your business. I'm Arthur Petropoulos, managing partner here at Hillview Partners. We're a middle market, lower middle market, investment banking, M&A, capital advisory firm, helping companies generating typically $1 million to $10 million pre-tax earnings or EBITDA, sell their businesses, or secure capital. So deal killer 1 is going to be a transition services agreement. So you're selling the business, you have been the owner for many years, there's going to be some time that they ask you to stick around after. It could be 3 months, it could be 5 years, but it needs to be negotiated, it needs to be clearly delineated and agreed upon by both parties, and whatever your objectives are needs to be negotiated as part of the deal by your banker representative to make sure that you are lining up not just the dollar amount you get, but how long you want to be involved. Some people sell 80% of their company so that they can have a private equity partner inject capital to grow it for the next 10 years so they can keep running it and maximize the value of the remaining 20% of the business. Other people are selling the business because they're retiring and they want to phase out of the business. What that looks like in the transition services agreement is a very different thing, and therefore it needs to be communicated clearly so that you are not surprised, so they are not surprised, and so it does not derail a deal, despite the fact that you might have agreed upon a preliminary price. Second is going to be an earnout and how it's structured. Earnouts are part of many, if not a majority, of lower middle market deals, and they are structured in many different ways. They can be revenue targets, EBITDA targets, gross profit targets, client retention targets. They can be contingent on many things over many durations of time. You need to keep X amount of your clients over this amount of time post-transaction. You need to generate this much EBITDA, this much revenue. But at the end of the day, every business is somewhat unique in that certain things are predictable and certain things are not. So certain things are controllable and certain things are not. And so from our perspective, if we can minimize the duration of time, because again, the longer you let something go, the more unpredictable life gets. The only thing we know about perfect storms is they keep happening. But you want to minimize duration and then make the contingent things that we are most in control of, or things that we are most confident are going to take place. And so it again is a very negotiated thing. So if someone says, I'll give you $1 billion if you can jump over the Empire State Building, well, it's not a $1 billion offer, right? And so every situation we look at, you have to negotiate the earnout, you have to negotiate it upfront, and then even when things evolve in a deal, there will be other elements to it, because you could say, oh, well, is the year after closing the calendar year after, or is it the 12 months after? Is it based on this figure? Is it based on that figure? If we miss it in 1 year, can we earn it back in the second year? Can we earn all of it back? Can we earn some of it back? There's a million different variables, and if you're not swimming in this ocean all day, a lot of these things can slip by, and it's the details, the structure of a deal that can make something very good or not so great. Number 3 is going to be the working capital requirements. And so working capital effectively is the capital in a business, typically the current assets minus the current liabilities, and what the acquirer expects you to leave in a business. Now, rules of thumb is it sometimes can be, we've seen 2 months to 6 months of operating expenses. We've seen the historical average working capital over the last 6 months, over the last 12 months, over the last 24 months. There's going to be a bit of tug of war there because it's going to depend on the growth trajectory of the business and a bunch of other variables, but you want to know how much of your capital is going to stay in the business and how much of it's going to come out. Now, generally speaking, most deals in the lower middle market are called cash-free, debt-free deals. You take all the cash off the balance sheet and that comes to the owner before closing, and you pay off all the debt, similar to like a mortgage on a house. You pay off the line of credits, you pay off the term loans for the business. Now, that being said, there's many, again, variations. Now, if a company tends to run very high receivables, if they tend to run very low or high payables, what their inventory looks like, how has that changed over the last year? Lots and lots of variables. Needs to get negotiated, need to take a firm position on that because there's going to be differences of opinion there. And the sooner you can do that in an exercise or a deal, the sooner you will find a good resolution or a high confidence level that the deal is going to get to closing. And so, again, getting to the price agreement is great, but then you start digging into all the other variables, and these things need to be worked out because it can change the effective value to the seller. If you're selling a business and I say, hey, I'll buy your house from you for $1 million, but I also need you to leave the two $200,000 Ferraris in the garage. Well, I really paid you $600,000 for the house because now I can go sell the Ferraris for $400,000, right? And so it's the same thing. What's being left? What's being taken out? What is the net aggregate practical? What is the seller getting when they sell their business? These things need to be contemplated as well. And number 4 that can derail a deal are agreements relative to employees. And this can go both ways. There are sometimes people that a new owner can say, we're not going to keep this particular person, that a seller may say they really want to keep the person. Now again, in today's environment where there's a real talent or labor shortage, there's not many situations where a buyer's not going to want to take everybody and then perhaps sort it out in years to come, but at least in the immediate time frame, keep everyone. But by the same token, there can be situations where acquirers say, I need A, B, and C person to stick around, and are they likely to do so? Well, that seems like a fairly benign comment. However, what can percolate later on in the transaction is that an acquirer can say, I want that person to sign an employment contract. And you can say, as running a business, well, we've never had people sign employment contracts. If I go and put this in front of them and say, you must agree to work for 3 years, they might say, that some people want the job security and be thrilled for it. Other people might say, well, I don't want to do that. What am I getting from this? What's this to me? And in some situations, sellers will have to take some of the proceeds of the deal and pay that to some of the employees to get their commitment for some time period thereafter. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. However, if the seller was contemplating a value for the deal of X dollars and all of a sudden they have to pay 10% of X to people within the company, well, they're really only getting 90% of X. And so again, it's not that it's good or it's bad, but it does impact the net amount that the seller is going to receive. And therefore, it needs to be contemplated in conjunction with the price. And so when we're talking deals with buyers, sometimes it comes down to like, hey, we're going to pay X price for a deal. Does that work? And we say, look, that's part of the puzzle. That's part of the equation. We really need to understand. And then we go into these 4 things. So again, find the things that can derail, find the landmines, and try to decipher them, try to delineate, define them in a mutually agreeable fashion. You're likely to have far less issues as things progress down the track. And again, also, if acquirers come to you and want to negotiate or tweak certain elements of it, it's like everything needs to be negotiated in tandem because it all impacts one another. It's like when you put a spare tire on a car, you can't over-tighten one particular bolt without going all 5 over and over and over again. I don't know if there's 5 bolts, but I did change a spare tire a couple years ago, I promise. And so, nonetheless, the point being is all of these things have to kind of keep being iterated in congruency as an aggregate because they are all effectively business terms of the deal. So let's go through that again. You have a great price for the business. Does it stop there? No. What are the other 4 things you really want to nail down to make sure you have the total deal put together? Well, in this situation, it's going to be the transition services agreement. It's going to be the structure of the earnouts of the deal. It's going to be the working capital that is to be left or to be taken out of the business, and it's going to be the employee treatment or employee obligations or employee considerations on a post-transaction basis. And really this boils down to kind of what we always say is the 4 prongs of a deal really come down to value, structure, transition, and stakeholders. This is it. This is kind of the more of the pragmatic, or take it one level deeper of like, what does that actually mean? What are the things you should actually look out for? What are the things that need to be contemplated and negotiated in tandem with the value of the business? And that's them. So that's the thought for today. Hope the week's finishing up well for everyone. God bless. Keep pushing forward. See everyone next time.